Okay, ready. Close your eyes. Think about the last time you were at a circus, a zoo, or an aquarium, and what feelings you were feeling at the time. Some of those feelings might be joy, curiosity, amazement, happiness. Did you ever stop to consider how the animals might be feeling? Today, I'm going to talk to you about how zoos, circuses, and aquariums, who often say that they are so for animal welfare, are actually detrimental to the animal's mental and physical health. Redefining the modern circus defines a circus as a scheduled event staged by traveling companies with mobile facilities, usually put on by exhibitors for profit and viewed by the public for entertainment. Circuses are wonderful for humans because we get to see bears in tutus on bicycles and big cats jump through flaming hoops. But the animals in these circuses have a very different view of things. America has done more research than any other country on animal welfare laws. However, our laws are severely behind other developed countries. As of now, the only federal laws that we have in place are the Endangered Species Act, the Animal Welfare Act, and the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, and the Lacey Act, all of which are still violated very regularly to this day. There are two major court cases when it comes to exposing the cruelty of circuses. The first one is the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals versus Feld Entertainment, Inc. In this case, an ex-employee of the Ringling Brothers Circus for 2 years testified against them for the cruelty that he witnessed firsthand. He said that he saw the use of bullhooks on elephants, chains on elephants' front and back legs, restricting animals from their normal socialization behaviors, and often restricting them from any movement at all, along with the use of blowtorches to remove hair. Another important case is Hagen versus Feld Entertainment, Inc. In this court case, a trainer for the Ringling Brothers sued the Ringling Brothers for wrongful termination after he reported them for violations of the Animal Welfare Act and USDA policies. He witnessed a lion in a hot train car for 6 hours, which is 2 hours over the legal limit. He was not allowed to go check on the tiger to give him water or any cooling devices, and as a result, the lion died. He was then told to place the lion's body in the truck where they kept all of the meat for the other animals, which is a violation of USDA policies, and then he refused to lie about it when he was asked. This is a list of famous circuses and their violations of the Animal Welfare Act. In fact, every major circus in all of the US has violated the AWA at least one time. However, removing animals from circuses doesn't mean that we have to get rid of the joy of circuses altogether. There are already a number of circuses that operate without the use of animals and feature humans doing daredevil tasks, silk performers, trapeze artists, and contortionists, and more. Now let's talk about zoos. It's not uncommon to go to a zoo and see sick animals, dirty enclosures, or underwhelmed or overwhelmed animals displaying behavior issues. Most zoos claim that they should be open because they focus on conservation. However, about 90% of animals in zoos are not endangered at all. Zoos also refuse to tell the public how many animals they kill each year. With this knowledge in mind, are zoos really care enough about animal welfare to remain in operation? Culling is a very popular practice in zoos. Culling is when too many animals have been born, or the animals that are born are deemed not fit for reproduction. In this practice, these animals are killed. This has been a practice that has gone on for many years, but what brought this practice into the public eye and really brought rage around this practice was the case of Marius the giraffe. He was a 2-year-old giraffe who was deemed unfit for breeding, and so the zoo culled him and then sold tickets to a special event where they dissected his body and fed him to lions. This obviously caused public outrage, but unfortunately, nothing has been done about this practice, and it is still used in most zoos today. Zoos usually choose culling over contraceptives because they say they want to give the animals a more natural life experience. But how natural is it to allow animals to give birth and then take their babies away to be killed right after? There are also other animal welfare concerns with zoos. Stereotypic behaviors are behaviors that are exhibited by animals with severe stress or mental health conditions, such as tigers pacing back and forth, or elephants or bears shaking their heads back and forth repeatedly. A 2004 Oxford study found that 80% of carnivores in captivity exhibit stereotypic behaviors. There are other concerns too, such as elephants living half as long in zoos as they do in the wild, and all animals having less space than they do in the wild, specifically the polar bear, who has 1 million times less space than he does in the wild. In the case of South Lake Safari Zoo, 500 animals died due to human error and negligence. Despite this, the zoo was still allowed to remain in operation by authorities. In the case of Longleaf Safari Park, multiple lion cubs were killed because the zoo allowed inbreeding to get out of control, and they openly admitted to allowing the inbreeding to get out of control because they wanted to constantly have cute cubs in the public eye. Mutilation of birds is also a very common practice in zoos. I'm sure you've noticed when you go to zoos that often the birds don't fly. That's because the tips of their wings are cut off with no anesthesia, so their most basic and common behavioral act of flying is taken away from them forever. Now let's talk about aquariums. It's common knowledge that fish feel pain and have basic brain functions. But what people don't realize is that fish communicate with each other, recognize human faces, have very intricate social lives, and are capable of developing mental health conditions just like humans. Fish welfare in aquariums is a huge issue, as unlike circuses and zoos, where animals are often bred, almost exclusively aquarium animals are wild caught. This means these animals have experienced what it's like to be free and have full reign of the ocean, which makes them more susceptible to developing mental health issues when they are then put in tanks. Cyanide is one of the most popular chemicals used to stun fish and make it easier to capture them to bring to the aquarium. This often kills a large number of fish and is detrimental to coral reefs. 30% of fish die during capture, and another 30% die during importation. So a large number of fish that you see in aquariums are taken from the ocean, along with the large number of fish that die in this process. There's also a study called Sound Stress in Seahorses that looked at stress responses in seahorses in quiet aquarium tanks with very little interaction versus large, noisy aquariums that are similar to the ones that you would see like out in an aquarium with humans around. The study showed that seahorses react both behaviorally and mentally to the loud noise and stress in this noisy aquarium environment. Whale and dolphin welfare is also a huge issue that is often talked about. If you look at whales and dolphins, it's pretty easy to understand why we can't recreate their environment in an aquarium. They swim thousands of miles a week and are incredibly social creatures that often interact with other pods. Unfortunately, this is just not something that can be done in an aquarium. Killer whales also have significantly shorter lifespans when they're in captivity versus in the wild. Male killer whales live about 50 to 60 years in the wild. But at the time of this study, which wasn't that long ago, of the 140 whales that were taken from captivity since the 1960s, none of them lived past their 30s, and only one lived into his 40s, which is considered ancient for the industry standard. Now that you've seen the horrors behind circuses, zoos, and aquariums, do you still believe that it's justifiable to keep these businesses in operation? Thank you. Now, Q&A, if anybody has questions.
So, I'm wondering, like, what if there are like laws against it, like the Animal like Welfare Act and all of those laws that you discussed, like who's keeping these people like accountable to like follow these laws?
The government, which is not always the most reliable. But aquariums, circuses, and zoos are supposed to be visited at least once a year to be checked upon and make sure that they are following the laws. And then there are also supposed to be random inspections to make sure that they are keeping up with those laws when they know that an inspection's not coming up. Unfortunately, that just doesn't always happen. And even when these zoos, circuses, and aquariums, especially circuses, since it happens so often, violate these laws, nothing really gets done about it. They're still allowed to stay in operation. It's just kind of a slap on the wrist and noted, and then nothing usually happens. Anybody else?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how you were talking about the seahorses and how the study where like one tank was quiet and one tank was like noisy, and obviously that's where they were more stressed. So like since a lot of these like zoos and aquariums and things like that are talking about like preservation of the species, is there anything else that is in place already that can like arguably be the head of preservation so that we don't need zoos and aquariums anymore? I mean, like I know there's other needs for them, but like is there another setting that has shown to be successful?
To my knowledge, no. There is something to be said for like rescue zoos and the rescue aquariums and things like that, and like actually studying animals with a purpose and trying to conserve them. Um, all of those environments are still going to be just as stressful on the animals. There are things that we can do to make it less stressful, like limiting human contact, giving them as much room as possible. And it still would have an effect on the animals, but if there was a very important end goal in mind, it could be justifiable. But as of right now, everything is still, front facing. They might say it's for conservation, but it's still about money and making profit. And then if that's all, can I get some critiques on like what I did good and what I could do better on?
I do think that like your passion for the topic shows like tremendously through like how you're talking and just like knowing stuff that wasn't in the PowerPoint, like answering our questions with like no hesitation. You seem very confident about this topic, and like that does really show. So good job on that. Um, I can't really think of like a critique. I guess maybe like sometimes talk a little slower.
Okay. Thank you. All right, if that's all. Oh, okay, Bianca.
Sorry, I keep like forgetting where the unmute button is.
Okay.
Um, So I thought you did like a really, really nice job like creating imagery in the beginning of the PowerPoint, like telling us to close our eyes and like imagine everything. And then even like your opening part of your presentation, you had like a lot of good imagery in it. It like connected me to what was happening. And I guess my critique would build off of that. Like when you got to the circus, your picture was a gorilla. Like it's so silly, and like obviously the content is important, but like I think having a picture there of like what you were talking about would have like blended really nicely with how you started it too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Right. Thank you guys. I'm gonna stop recording if I can figure it out.
And
And Okay, it's back. It's back.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I liked how the information that you had on the slides was very, very simple and to the point, and then you yourself actually like expanded upon it, because it would have been weird if everything was there and you were just like, hey, here it is. I really liked how you took the tiny little facts that you had and you just made it something huge, and you were able to really put it into perspective with all the different examples and all the different cases and all the different animals. So you did a really good job with that.
Thank you.